And coming up tonight in the wrap, the threat of a veto-proof majority in Congress forced the president's hand and make him commit to signing Iran legislation. Is Hillary Clinton really spending $2.5 billion on her presidential campaign? And New Jersey Governor Chris Christie wants to cut Social Security. Wow, what could possibly go wrong? We'll discuss all of that, plus yay or nay, and potluck. This is the Daily Wrap, live from New York City. And joining me tonight, as usual, SiriusXM host, Forbes.com columnist, and the man who lives vicariously through himself. My co-host, Rick
Can you
Unger.
do that? Can you live vicariously?
Apparently you
through
can.
yourself?
I do.
Cool, I like that.
You know her from television, and she's now the editor of JaneUnchained.com. Jane Velez Mitchell is back. And finally, new to the Daily Wrap, he's the author of The American Boomerang, How the World's Greatest Turnaround Nation Will Do It Again, all the way from down under, sort of, or maybe Texas. Nick Adams joins us. Okay, let's get down to the daily download. And today, the Senate reaching a compromise on a bill that would allow Congress to reject or approve a nuclear deal with Iran. This under the leadership of Senator Bob Corker, Democratic Senator Ben Cardin, along with the Senate Foreign Relations Committee. Today, the Senate Foreign Relations Committee has approved a bill that would allow Congress to review and vote on any nuclear agreement with Iran. This bill represents the compromise between the committee and the White House on the Corker-Menendez bill. White House Press Secretary Josh Earnest spoke today about the possibility of the bill being signed by the president.
If we could clarify Congress's role by taking all of these steps, shortening the review period, being clear about what it is that they're voting on, making clear that this is a vote to vote later on congressional sanctions, that would actually achieve, at least in part, what the president has established as the priority here.
Okay, but will the president sign the legislation?
If presented with a compromise along the lines that I just laid out here, that would be the kind of compromise the president would be willing to sign.
Okay, so joining us from Washington, D.C. is the former chair of the House Intelligence Committee. That is Congressman Pete Hoekstra. Congressman, thanks for joining us. We appreciate it.
Always good to be with you. Thank you.
Your thoughts on the developments today and some rare bipartisanship in Washington.
My thoughts today are hallelujah. Let's enjoy it. This is exactly the way the process is supposed to work. Republicans and Democrats in the House and Senate, in this case the U.S. Senate, working with the president, develop a compromise. It goes through committee unanimously. I may have problems with the specific parts of this legislation one way or another, but this is the way the process is supposed to work. Congress got what it wanted, which is a say on a very important international foreign affairs issue for the president. It was molded in such a way that he could accept it. So, if we would see this more often, the country would be in a much better position.
Pete, it's Rick Unger. I absolutely agree with everything you just said, but there are some complications that may lay ahead, and I'm curious what you have to say about that. First, will Corker be able to resist suggested amendments when it goes to the full Senate? And probably a bit more vexing, while the leader in the Congress has said that he will, if this bill passes the Senate, he says he will take this bill and put it to a vote in the House of Representatives. Do we really think that this bill can get through the House without being attacked and possibly changed by the more extremist elements in the House?
Yeah, I think so. I'm rather encouraged by what happened today. And, I think the people obviously the Senate recognized that, hey, keep the extraneous stuff out. Let's really work at getting something done. This is an important issue. Let's take the politics out of it. And I think that once it gets to the House, with what we saw in the committee today, all the Republicans and all the Democrats voting for it, I think you've got a really good shot that when the majority leader in the House, McCarthy, puts this bill on the floor, that they're going to keep amendments off. They'll have enough Democrats and enough Republicans to keep a clean measure, because at the end, I think really Congress wants to have a role in this process. This is going to be an issue that is all about substance. There will be some politics in it, but I don't think there'll be enough politics to derail it.
Good.
Speaking of politics, Congressman, the Ayatollah has been very vocal about economic sanctions being lifted day one, while obviously the Obama administration supposedly negotiated that economic sanctions wouldn't be lifted until verification began. So even though things were getting along here finally here in Washington, what do you see possibly killing this deal? Is that the linchpin?
Well, obviously, the linchpin is going to be getting it all down on paper, because once it's all written down, the different interpretations of what is now a rough outline, a framework, Iran, Iran and the United States can disagree on the framework, but once it's all written down, the Iranians, the Americans, the Europeans, and others will be able to look at the document and see exactly what it says. And so if these are true disagreements in terms of what they think they've agreed to, or whether these are just political talking points for back home in Iran, I don't really know. But if this is what they've agreed to, is what the Obama administration is saying, they get it on paper, there's a lot of other things out there that potentially can derail it. So I'm not sure this is a done deal, but these differences of interpretation, or at least expressed interpretation, that may get to be a barrier.
Congressman Pete Hoekstra, thanks so much for joining us from Washington.
Always good to be with you.
It.
Thank you.
Thank
Take
you.
care, Pete.
Let's talk about the political aspect of all this.
Yeah, well, we should probably begin, I think, by actually hitting some of the big points of what the agreement is. Basically, what the bill now says, the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, after there's a deal in June, would have 30 days to review the deal, assuming it gets completed. Congress can then choose to put forth a resolution disapproving the deal or approving the deal. But if they want to disprove it, it's going to take 60 votes of the Senate to say no. Mm-hmm. If they do that and the president vetoes that resolution, then it's the usual. They'd have to have 67 votes to overturn it. So it's interesting. I agree with Pete Hoekstra. It's a great deal. I, too, have always felt, as you know, that Congress should have their say on this. They're the ones who pass the sanctions. They should be the ones to lift them. Also, by the way, the president is not empowered to lift the sanctions during that 30-day period. Can't be done until Congress approves it.
Okay.
So I think it's a good day.
Jane?
Well,
Quickly?
listen, I think that their bipartisanship is wonderful, but what happens during that 30-day review period? Is that where the Republican mischief begins, where they derail this deal? Because this is obviously a legacy for Obama. He wants to be known as the normalization president, the inclusion president, and that could be something they want to rob him of.
Thank you, Jane. And Nick, we'll get your thoughts after the break. Coming up next, will Hillary Clinton become a record breaker? We'll tell you what we mean next on the Daily Wrap.